From Chicago's CAN TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there. Welcome back to Chicago Newsroom. I'm Ken Davis, and there's an election going on. Although a lot of people don't know there's an election going on, but there is one. And to begin today, we're all going to sing together. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I just became mayor of Chicago because I am the labor leader of the Midwest. Rahm Emanuel, according to Mike Sneed in today's newspaper, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see if I have the details here. He's going to announce, after he speaks to the City Club of Chicago in a couple of days, that he's accepted the endorsement of 15 labor unions representing 70 locals, hundreds of workers, thousands of workers all throughout the city, including the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the Laborers District Council, International Union of Operating Engineers, and just about everybody else in Chicago except the teachers and the cops. So, here to talk with us today about this, Cheryl Corley from NPR Chicago. I just gathered a bunch of old friends to sit around and talk today because there's just so much to talk about. John Dempsey from WLS.
How are you?
The Big 89. Good to have you back, John. And of course, Mick Dumke from Chicago Reader. And I just heard you on the radio just on the way down here today.
True.
So multimedia Mick, they call him. And of course the purveyor of First Tuesdays at the Hideout, which is the best political live talk show in town.
She's going to have to become an alumni of WBEZ.
That's right, so we can all be alumni.
Exactly.
That's right. To fit in this crowd, yeah.
Yeah, to fit in this public radio alumnus crowd. So, Rahm Emanuel, the big labor guy, everybody has signed up. Everybody's on board. What's going on?
Well, was it Edmund Burke, not the alderman from the southwest side, but the British statesman who said in politics there are no permanent friends or permanent enemies, only permanent interests. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine that the iron workers love Rahm Emanuel or love his warm and fuzzy personality or the other guys in the building trades, but he is the pro-business mayor. When I say pro-business, I mean the guy who wants to build more buildings, and that creates more jobs for the building trades unions. Mm-hmm. And I just think that I've heard the commercials, we support Rahm Emanuel, and that he is the person who they feel best represents their interests in the city of Chicago.
Yeah, and he, in his first budget, he jacked up our water and sewer fees. Mm-hmm. There were much
For a reason.
There are much needed investments that need to be made in the system, although we've looked into it. I mean, these water and sewer funds are used to pay for all sorts of other goodies in the city budget. But that said, he did put the trade unions to work doing some of this infrastructure stuff. So he's to be credited for that, but it's also very smart politics as well. So I think that was the first thing that helped him win this endorsement back 3 years ago.
And just walking over here today, Ken, I saw a city water crew digging up the street, and only half of them were asleep. Only half. So I think we're making progress.
Reform. He is the reform mayor.
That's why he is the reform mayor.
And plus he has, he has a big union that has endorsed his opponents. So, he really has to work hard to make sure he gets out that labor vote.
You're referring
to the Chicago Teachers Union, which has said no to
They're
Rahm.
with Chewy. And I guess he really needed to make a really powerful statement that, so what? I've got everybody else, right?
But the other thing is, when is the last time these unions have not endorsed an incumbent mayor?
The incumbent, yeah.
Not since I've been following Chicago politics. So the fact that this is getting a huge splash, I think, says more about Rahm's campaign style and his needs at the moment than it actually does anything about a changing dynamic.
This goes back a little bit to my days of working for the city, John, but if you think the water department guys are so slackard. I'd like to see you go out on a morning when it's
No.
14 below
No,
zero
you're-
and there's
no, you're
and
exactly
Western
right.
Avenue is flooded because then you got to dig it up
You're
and fix
exactly right.
All
And
right?
that's, and yeah, I'm
Send the phone calls to John.
I'm joking, of course, but obviously the city workers are the guys that get down there and rebuild the pipes
Right.
and plow the streets and things like that. And I understand that, you know.
Well, actually, mostly they're not the ones who are getting down there replacing the pipes because that's all been privatized to private contractors, and the private contractors really like Rahm Emanuel much more than the city people, I would guess.
Yeah.
So all right, so we have the big news that Mayor Emanuel is this great union friend and friend of the unions.
Wonder how that goes over with Bruce Rauner.
His wine buddy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those must be great conversations.
I think we should add this to the list. We have a list of audio recordings that we're willing to pay $100 for. Like the call that Mayor Daley made to Rahm to say, "I've decided I want you to come and be mayor because I got to get out of here." Those
After Tony Preckwinkle got
Yeah.
elected
right,
elsewhere.
Right. And that would be a great tape to have too, wouldn't it? Just the conversation
conversations
between
about-
Rauner
yes.
and yeah. It's probably a lot friendlier than you might think.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. So the Tribune editorial board had its what I suppose is legally the first forum, although Cheryl, you hosted the weekend, you had a different one, which you want to talk about a little bit after this. But at the Tribune editorial board, you had all of them sitting around the table. And the question as we go around our table is, did anybody emerge from that as a likely opponent to Rahm Emanuel? Is the city going to coalesce around one of these people to be the challenger?
I don't think that anybody did emerge. I mean, all four of them, Doc Walls, Willie Wilson, Chuy Garcia, and Bob Fioretti, their main claim to the voters is, I'm not Rahm Emanuel. And I know he's unpopular. I know he's disliked by a lot of people, but he is the mayor. He is the incumbent. And I just haven't seen really anything from any of these four that would give an indication as to why they should take Rahm's place on the fifth floor, other than the fact that they might be nicer people, perhaps, because we all know that Rahm is not the nicest guy in the world. But that, to me, is their main claim to fame. I'm not Rahm, and I don't know if that's going to be enough. So certainly the Tribune poll has him 8 points shy of the 50% plus one margin that he needs,
which we
to
have
avoid
we
a runoff.
do have to talk about that.
But even, and we will, I guess I don't want to jump the gun, but even in a worst case scenario for Rahm, if he does get into a runoff, whether it's with Chuy or Fioretti, I still think he's going to win.
He's going to win
in April.
Yeah.
But the goal is to get into a runoff. So
That's
at this
right.
point in time, I think that they have to distinguish themselves, the challengers, primarily as not being Rahm. So I think what you're saying, John, is right on point. That's exactly what they need to do. And it should actually be, I mean, they've gone after each other a little bit more than if I were one of their advisors, than I would tell them to do. I think it's just be a referendum on Rahm.
Because I'm wondering if now you'll see Fioretti and Garcia not talk about Rahm so much and go after each other, because they so badly
you've
want to
seen
be
that.
in second place.
You see a little bit of that, but I think that the attacks on each other, the four, kind of surprised some of them, because I think that they thought that that the argument should be against Rahm
Against
right now,
Rahm,
and not against each other.
Because it's really important to keep this point central in the discussion, and we've just talked about it over and over and over again on the show. What this election is about is not electing a mayor. What this election is about is, can Rahm Emanuel get 50% plus one vote? That is the only question on the table. And any vote for anybody else is a vote against Rahm Emanuel, and so therefore takes away from his likelihood of getting 50%
That's
plus
right.
one.
And if you get into a runoff, then there's a clear opponent. There's
Right.
a clear alternative,
Right.
and
And
people are paying
anything can
attention.
happen.
Exactly.
I said a
I
couple
do.
minutes ago that he probably would win in April,
But I don't know if
you
that's
don't
true.
know if
I
that's
don't know
true,
if that's
because
true or not.
anything can happen.
Yeah.
If an incumbent doesn't get 50%, that is a red flag. That is
That is a
Let's
referendum.
just
Well,
state the obvious. Yeah, that more than half of the voting public
Right.
doesn't want the current guy they have.
Well, I think Rahm has already seen the red flag. What incumbent agrees to several debates
Right.
and forums and
Right.
things like
Well,
that?
And
If
names
we
his opponents.
The daily
Yeah.
method was to just not debate the opponents
because
and
he was so
ignore
far
them.
ahead.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised, actually. I was a little taken aback when he agreed to do all 5 of them, because what it seems to me he does is he gives them air, he gives them oxygen,
But
and
I-
nobody knows who they are.
Nobody knows who they are, but I also think that he knows where he is, and that there has been such disapproval by some of the actions that he's taken that he is able to make his case more so than if he doesn't have that chance, if he's not
And
there
I
with
think
the
he
others.
views these 4 people as so weak that his attitude is, hey, I'll get on a stage with these 4
Yeah, yeah.
and make the comparison.
Interesting
Yeah,
point. Yeah.
that's right. And also, one of the things we're talking about is his personality, his style matters a lot. And so there's obviously been a calculation that he looks worse by not engaging with these guys,
right,
and he looks
right,
aloof,
right,
and he looks arrogant, like the jerk that we all think he is
And
anyway.
yes, since
so-
we already think he's a jerk, he's trying to do the statesman-like thing, which is to debate these opponents
I'll let you guys
5 times.
characterize it that way.
Well, I mean, the trip
We're
poll
just
out,
speaking for the people.
Yes.
which is what the Reader does.
That's
Yes,
right.
of course.
Looking at the trip poll that's out today, it has Rahm at 42%. Now, that sounds bad, but you got to remember that he was way lower than that just a few weeks ago.
Absolutely.
He's coming up very, very, very quickly. He's still got, 3-4 weeks almost. I have to tell you, my own view is I don't see any way that he doesn't get to 50%. I just don't see it personally.
Well, when you
but-
look, he's got 39% black support, which is
Right.
which is up from what the last poll.
Look at the black turnaround in Chicago in August, only a couple months ago. 60% of African Americans in Chicago disapproved of Rahm Emanuel. Today, 42%,
Well, you
and
know what?
40% approved.
Well, you know what it is. I mean, there was a lot of disappointment, anger when those 50 schools
Absolutely,
were closed.
right.
And I think that, I don't know if the calculation was there at the time, but you know that you have a certain amount of time where you can try to help shape opinions or change people's opinions.
Right.
I think all of that campaign money and the commercials where you have a lot of black individuals coming on and saying, Rahm's the guy or whatever. The fact that he's going to make all of these, that he has made all of these appearances in neighborhoods, going out to Pullman the other day, talking about, we have this, we have a business
new
interest, we
factories,
have a
new
new factory,
businesses
new
coming.
business.
If he
that
mentions
he's
that
making the
Whole
change.
Foods in Englewood one more time, I am going to scream.
Well, he has talked about Mariano's
No,
in
he's talking
Bronzeville,
about
so
Mariano's.
he
Right,
said, well, maybe we'll go just a little bit cheaper.
But could I just
don't know.
get this on the table? The Tribune today: Rahm 42, Chewy 18%, Fioretti 10%, Willie Wilson 7%, and Doc Walls 2%. So I don't know if you
and
had
20% undecided.
20%
Exactly,
undecided, which is the
yeah.
but undecided always goes to the incumbent, doesn't it? I mean,
Well,
Not always.
not always.
They know who this guy
They
is.
know
I
who he
think people are
is.
just really plugging in for real now. So that's why you
Yeah,
still have a lot of
yeah.
undecideds.
Yeah.
And in this instance, I don't think they all go to the incumbent. I mean, the mayor's already spent millions of dollars, shoving his narrative down all of our throats. I don't
does
know
he
about
have
you
enough
guys.
money to do that?
Yeah, I
He's
don't know. He
raising
may
even
run
more.
out. He only raised $800,000 in the last week.
In the last week,
Yeah.
800,000 in the past week.
But I don't know about you guys, I'm getting mailers every day. I mean, for the last week, I've had a different one every single day. Yeah, I'm collecting them like baseball
I brought
cards. I
these
want a
for you.
complete
I brought
set
these for
before
you.
it's over.
Yeah.
But can I say something? It was interesting about this. We all know that Rahm made a strategic decision not to challenge the petitions of Willie Wilson.
Right.
Obviously, I mean, my theory is that he didn't want to anger African Americans. Willie Wilson, 7%.
7%.
Rahm, 8 points away from what he needs, the 50%. Now, I'm wondering,
obviously.
does he regret not challenging? I think he probably thinks he did the right thing by not challenging Willie Wilson, because
I don't
if
know.
Wilson wasn't in the race, I don't think that his 7% would automatically
Well,
go to Rahm.
there's
It would-
one other
might be-
thing when you get a little further down in the trip poll today. Willie Wilson is polling 14% among African Americans, but Garcia is polling 10%. So I mean, if Chuy Garcia is going to have some hope of being
He
the
needs a
real
stronger
challenger,
black,
he's not. He's just not
He
bringing
needs
it
Willie
in the
Wilson to
black
give him
community.
some money.
Yeah, or
pretty
something.
much.
You
I
know,
mean,
pretty much.
yeah.
I mean, because that's
again-
why Willie Wilson is well known. Because, well, number one, if you watch gospel television, you know who Willie Wilson is, but also, you know, he's the only one who's been able to mount, you know, a campaign that, a media campaign because of the money he has.
The money he has.
The money he
Because of his own money.
raised from himself.
Yeah.
Which is a great, it's always the best strategy if you can raise it from yourself, as the
Bruce
current
Rauner
governor has
shows
shown
us.
us.
Yeah.
Don't we all love America United or
Exactly.
As
Citizens
Willie Wilson
United?
says, I'm nobody sent, right?
Yeah,
Right, exactly.
Now any millionaire can run for office. That's the America we live in today. So, issues. Should we talk about issues? Are there
Issues?
that
What
are
issues?
that are worth
What-
talking
Well, I know
about?
that Willie Wilson
Sure.
wants to take away the police cars and have the officers walk or take the L.
Well, you know, it was interesting though at the forum that I hosted at the Chicago
That's
Women Take Action.
That's really where we need to talk. Hold on.
Okay.
Don't just pass that up. You are the one living human being in the world who has actually spent like a half an hour one-on-one interviewing or discussing things with all 5 of these guys.
Yeah.
You did that this weekend at the Chicago Women Take Action
Yeah,
Forum.
forum.
And what I've really been wondering about is are you willing to sort of share some insight with us? Were you surprised by anything? Did anybody disappoint you or excite you beyond where you thought you would be? What were your impressions as you were sitting up there on that stage for, 2.5 hours or something?
And have you recovered yet from that experience?
It was kind of like a whirlwind.
Yeah,
But,
I'll say.
But it was interesting because, well, I had met and interviewed and talked to 3 of the candidates, well, actually 4 during my career. Willie Wilson was the only candidate that I did not know. So if there was any sort of surprise, it was perhaps him, just because I did not know him. And, you know, he came across as kind of a very interesting kind of guy. So one that, as I said during the forum, that was funny because he talked about how his employees all made $100,000, and I said, "Well, everybody wants to come work for you."
At
then,
the
right?
McDonald's or
Yeah,
at the,
exactly.
No, at his,
the hospital supply?
The,
His
the
medical
best paid
supply
McDonald's
company.
jobs in the world.
But the
No,
burgers
no.
are
Do
really
you,
Yeah,
do you want
exactly.
fries with them?
May I bring them to your
May I
house?
bring them to your
He
house?
doesn't have the McDonald's anymore. This is medical supply.
Medical
company.
supply,
Yeah. Yeah. So he was interesting in that sense. And I think that Doc Wall's, his take on having the Bible taught in schools, I thought was interesting too, outside of religion classes or things like that. But that's been discussed before. So I don't really think that I was really surprised by anything. I thought that Fioretti and Garcia made very strong points, and really discussed the issue. Maybe that's what was surprising about the whole thing, is that they really kind of answered the questions that these folks really wanted to hear.
That is
Yeah.
interesting. That is
And
actually, yeah.
so if people were deciding about issues that were important to women, if they wanted to know how they felt about sick leave or how they felt about domestic violence, I think that they really got a clear-cut
and
arena of that.
If I could just insert a blatant plug here, that was broadcast live here on CAN TV, and you can watch it anytime. Just go to cantv.org/election. There is an unbelievable compendium up there of videos of all the different ward races and different candidate forums, and it's really, you could talk about binge watching. If you're a political junkie, you could spend the whole day with CAN TV. So, I got to say that I don't think you guys saw much of the Tribune debate, right? I had the privilege of being home recuperating from a little bit of minor surgery, so I was actually able to sit and watch the entire thing.
And did it make you more sick?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I don't know what it did for the recuperative process.
You
but,
know who you're voting for.
But you know what I thought was really interesting was how Doc Walls commanded that thing. Doc Walls would, no matter who was speaking, he would just cut him off and he would say, "No, the real issue is disinvestment in the African American community," or something, and take it back to that place. And it's really interesting to me that maybe when you're polling at 1%, you can afford to be that way or whatever it is. But The others felt to me like they were kind of being very careful and kind of sticking to their.
Well, I think Rahm would have no reason to. I mean, I think he was on the attack mode a little bit, like when he talked about Garcia raising property taxes during the Harold Washington days, or Fioretti voting for the parking meter deal. He was attacking a little bit, but he didn't want to go overboard on that. I guess I'm surprised.
He lets his campaign players do that.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that Garcia and Fioretti weren't more on the attack.
Against Rahm or against other?
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't suit them to be attacking Wilson or Walz. Why weren't they attacking?
They need to be
Rahm?
more aggressive to Rahm if they want to pick up momentum. I think they have to keep talking about, and they don't have to. I mean, they don't have to be talking about the mayor's son or family the way Fioretti did. I guess that was last week. But they need to be very aggressively, again, I think, making it clear this is a referendum on the mayor. This is what he's done. This is what he's done. This is what I would do different.
And by the way, not to talk
Right.
about Rahm's son or the incident where he got mugged, but I think that was a real blunder by Fioretti, because when he made his initial statement saying, why haven't the perpetrators who attacked Rahm's son been charged? He was openly implying that he didn't believe the son's story of why he was out at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. And if you're going to go down that road, you've got to back it up, and he didn't. And I just think it made it look
misstep.
bad.
The only thing I was going to add about the dock walls, because he does have this opportunity now to appear in most of the debates.
Apparently all but Channel 11, according to Mark Brown today.
Right. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, he only got 0.9% during the last mayoral election. So it's going to be kind of...
could round it up to 1%. Come on, be charitable.
It's going to be interesting, though, to see if what he gains, because I think he will gain during these debates.
I was just going to say, if Doc Walz could be lucky enough to come in second place, and Rahm doesn't get 50%, would Willie Wilson give him money for the April?
Or the other candidates for that matter. Is Willie Wilson in this to
bankroll
defeat Rahm Emanuel or for some other purposes? Where will that money come from?
I wanted to ask a broad question about where you think in geographic Chicago this battle is going to be fought. It strikes me that it has been my feeling up to now that the whole war is going to be fought in the African American community, because that's the one place where there could be enough significant anti-Rahm sentiment that something could happen. With these polls today, I'm even doubting that anymore. But, I mean, okay, you guys can't say this because you're all working reporters. I'm just some guy who has a TV show, so I can say this. It appears to me that largely speaking, the Latino community just kind of doesn't vote in numbers that are significant enough to be really important in this race. And John, you're our being on WLS, you're our representative of the white community.
Yes.
I would say
He'll
that
wear that mantle.
Exactly. The conservative white male station.
That's right. So, I mean, I'm guessing that your listeners who live in Chicago are going to all vote for Rahm Emanuel, right?
Well, I would guess that yes, our listeners who do live in the city. It's interesting to go back to the beginning of the show and the Snead announcement of all these building trades unions that are endorsing Rahm. Do these people like Rahm Emanuel? No, but does he represent their interests? When I say these people, I mean the blue collar, many of them white workers who are union workers who appreciate what he's done to give them more jobs. Yes, those people I think will be voting for Rahm, and I think I do agree with your point that white Chicago I think pretty solidly will go for Emanuel. He does have more African American support than we thought, but I do agree that the battle, if there is a battle here, it will be fought in the African American community.
Yeah, my assumption is it's not just the percentage, it's the turnout that's always been the key, because Mayor Daley, when he was first elected, had very little African American support. He those numbers increased
He
every
built it
election,
over- he
but
built it.
the percentage of people voting just fell off the
we
table.
saw this with Pat Quinn. I mean,
Very-
if,
very-
if African
exactly.
Americans had
Right.
turned out for
Right.
Pat Quinn, that
Right.
he would still be
Yes.
governor now.
Yeah.
But he
That's
didn't
how he lost it.
excite
He lost the
people.
black vote.
And I think that if Toni Preckwinkle or Karen Lewis were in this race, those two women, either of those two women, would be a candidate that African Americans can get excited by. And we were all here during the Harold Washington years. We saw the 90% turnout. And
I was in
there's
high school in Michigan,
yeah.
John, just full disclosure, but yeah.
But
You're
none
just
of
a kid at the table.
But none of
Yeah,
these
yeah.
candidates inspire
relative,
that
I
kind of
suppose, right?
excitement.
Well, interestingly enough, Greg Hines reported yesterday that voter registration is up 1%. 10,000 new registrations from over 2011. In other words, it's statistically insignificant.
Well, you know what? It's interesting when you talk about municipal elections. I mean, all across the country, they're pretty dismal numbers. And if you, here's how the City Elections Board likes to spin it. They say that, between 9 and 18% of folks, turn out for municipal elections. And that during 2011, it was 42% in the city of Chicago. So he said, not bad.
Not bad, yeah,
So,
yeah.
you have to look at it both ways, I guess, kind of glass half
But
full.
if you exclude Mick from the conversation and talk about we remember that astounding thing that happened with Harold Washington when he said, I'm not going to run unless you're going to give me whatever it was, 100,000.
Right.
And 100,000 people went out and registered, and 100,000 people went out and voted. You can make elections in Chicago exciting. Jane Byrne election was an exciting election. This one isn't one of those. And what's going to work for Rahm Emanuel is nobody's going to vote. Hardly any people are going to vote.
Yeah, and it's been decades since those elections, know. So,
Right.
and like John was saying, you have to find a candidate who really excites people.
Well, and you know what? The prep time is important. I mean, Chuy Garcia got into this at the last minute when
Yes.
Karen Lewis got out.
Right.
Yes.
Alderman
He
Fiore
wasn't
just
really
hasn't had the
prepared.
means.
Right.
He wasn't
That's-
really prepared, and so the opposition really hasn't had time to build a legitimate campaign, fundraising, the voter registration, the infrastructure. I mean, they're sort of doing this along the way.
I went to
everything.
Chuy Garcia's thing at 63rd and Cottage Grove on Saturday, a big thing with Karen Lewis. And I have to say he was fierier and more on point and really working the crowd more than I've seen. But it wasn't really a huge crowd, let's be honest. And, it was, I think he wanted to, by having it where he had it, I think he wanted to make a point that he had more African-American support, but it really wasn't that much there. It was mostly a white and Latino crowd. But anyway, let's conclude by going around the table and having you, putting you on the spot and asking you the 50% plus one question. It is the question that we're all facing today. I've already said it. Rahm gets it in the first round. That's my prediction.
I think you're right. I think he barely squeaks by. It'll be something like 51 or 52%. But I do think he'll get it.
I'm going to hopefully say he comes in just under 50%, and we're going to have a runoff because I think the city needs it for a mayor who's done as many controversial things in the controversial way that he has. I think we need to have that discussion.
If I can just interject, I totally 100% agree with that. I want there to be a runoff. It's not an anti-Rahm statement. I just want there to be a runoff because I want a one-on-one.
I'm okay if it's an anti-Rahm statement.
Well,
It's okay.
I'm trying to be.
I know.
Sure.
I think it'll be a squeaker, and I think at this point that there will be a runoff.
You do.
I do.
You do.
Yeah.
Wow.
2 and 2.
2 and 2. Well, I think.
We'll have to go into a runoff on this show.
Yeah.
apparently.
Yeah, John, you probably agree with the sentiment too that a runoff is a good thing for
Oh,
the,
I do
for
think
the
it's a good
electoral.
thing. And I agree exactly with what Mick
so-
said. He has done some very, very controversial things.
Yes, he has.
And he needs to be in a
needs to be held
serious
accountable.
race, and this
Yeah.
is not a
And
serious
this was
race
not
what we're
that,
seeing
yeah.
right now.
Okay, we just ran out of time. We just crashed against the wall of time, and we have to quit. So thank you very much, Cheryl Corley, NPR. Thank you very much, Reader Mick Dumke.
Thanks,
Go
Ken.
see First Tuesdays. It's a good thing. And John Dempsey, WLS. You can hear him in the mornings with John Howell. And check out all those things on cantv.org/election. And you can watch our show anytime you want to by just going to this address, and you can watch us on YouTube, and you can relive this wonderful experience we just had. Tom Clark will be in this seat next week, and it'll be a really good discussion. I hope you'll tune in for that, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. I'm Ken Davis. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.